Right, hello, I'm Scott Roebuck, and so I won, was it the 2021 Best of Show for the Louisville National Art Show. And so I'll be teaching another workshop here. I taught one last year, and so it'll be May 13th. So May 13th. And so the idea is, right, kind of designing landscapes kind of in plein air. So we'll be at the center, Louisville Center, in the kind of areas around, right, either the neighborhoods or the park. And so the idea is not to copy, learning to not copy the landscape and exactly what you see, but to use them as tools or characters, right, in your painting, right, to rearrange as needed, or just to outright change them and create, so you're able to create the painting you want to and not feel like you're slavishly just copying, right? You can develop your style, right? Or the artwork that you want to create. Demonstrating kind of designing a landscape. So you can see I'm going to use a sketch and just go off this sketch. But the same principles would apply if you're going plein air or if you're working from a photo. So my idea, essentially here, what I like about this, right, is the road, essentially a lead in, going in, and then we have some nice, this is a church. This is downtown Boulder area. This is Spruce Street. And then this is a church that's downtown. I mean, it's by kind of the east end of Pearl Street. But it's nice, right? We have a lot of atmospheric perspective going back, right, with the mountains and the clouds. And so this is kind of a late winter scene, maybe borderline early spring, where the trees are still bare. But what I'm really looking at, right, I like to think about composition and design essentially as composition as a bunch of triangles, right? I have this triangle here, right, that's bringing me into the painting. I have a triangle kind of here that brings me down into the painting. And then I kind of have these trees on the side that kind of bracket and keep you in the painting with some nice points of interest, right? The church. And so another thing I want to mention, one that's important to me, right? Might not be important to you, but I really like playing transparent and opaque off each other. So you can see these trees in this part of the building, right, are very transparent. Whereas this in the sky and lit parts are very opaque. So I want to keep that. I will probably redesign the clouds to make them, to accentuate this triangle shape maybe a little bit more. I'll play with that. We'll see how that goes. I'll probably redesign some of these shadows a little bit more. I'm thinking I'm going to put a figure in just to give it a little more interest, give it a little story, I guess, that you can fill in with your own, in your own mind, but maybe a person here and then a couple distant people back there. And so we'll see how that goes. And if it doesn't work, we'll take them out. So, the big thing, right, I'm just going to play around with stuff, right, see how it works. If it doesn't work, just take it out. Nice thing about oil paint or opaque paints in general, right, you can just cover them up or scrape them out. I'll probably take this white, I think that's to represent a sidewalk or snow, but I'll probably take that out. I don't really like it over there. Brings the eye to over here, right, where I want the eye in this general area here. All right. So all right, my palette, just 4 basic colors. So this is kind of my plein air palette, I guess you'd say. I don't extend it too much if I'm in the studio painting, but cad yellow light, alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue, and phthalo green, and then titanium white. I generally like my paints very thick and stiff. I can always loosen them up that just works for the way I'm painting. And you'll see me work with a palette knife quite a bit. And that's because I like the thick paint. I will say phthalo green, if you have a hard time with phthalo green, I buy the student grade paint. You can see it here, Gamblin 1980 paint. So it's not quite so overpowering, right? Phthalo green is so powerful, you don't need the professional level paint. And so the student grade I find works quite well. And I use Gamblin because I like thicker paint. Some paints are a little bit thinner. And so just to start, what I'll do is I'll mix up just kind of like a yellow ochre, raw sienna type color. So essentially it's just a little bit of each color. And just a little bit to make some marks, right? It's too green, a little bit yellow, right? Yellow ochre is just essentially a brownish yellow color. So I have the alizarin crimson. And so, you know, if I'm painting indoors, I might have a cadmium yellow light on there. But for most landscapes, I don't feel like I need it. If I'm painting a portrait, maybe I'll have cadmium yellow light on there. Yes, cadmium red light, right? So I might have that cadmium red light on there. And so I don't worry too much. It's just essentially a brownish color. And so I will make a mark right in the middle of my canvas. I'll generally check to see that's pretty close. And so a good drill I think people to do is just to be able to eyeball what would be the middle, what would be a quarter, right? And so make the marks and then just take a ruler and check them to see how close you are. And if you practice that, eventually you'll just be able to do it pretty easily. And then not just a quarter, but also thirds. So a third would be about there. And so, right, it's a little high. That's probably a third there. Right? And so I'm just making those marks thinking about, so I know where the middle is. So if I want to push things off balance, you may have heard the rule of thirds. I don't stick strictly to it. It's just kind of a nice thing to know. See there? So that's pretty close. Right, and pretty close is good enough for now. And so I'll just make some marks. Now, if I'm plein air painting, we'll just use paint. Now, if I was doing a studio piece, I might use a colored pencil or a pencil so I can make these marks and then so I can more easily erase them. But now it doesn't matter too much.
So you're thinking about this when you're out in the field painting?
Yeah, so as I'm in the field painting, right, this is all going through my mind. I'm not worried about the objects, right? I'm not worried about a tree or grass, or I'm just thinking about designing my canvas and how to make it easier to be more successful, right? Because I don't want to just guess. I want to have something in mind. I want to have a plan, essentially. And so that's why I do these little sketches here. So I have a basic plan, and I can look at it, and I can decide what I like, what I don't like, what I want to change, what I want to keep, right? What I'm not sure about. Because whenever I'm going to make a mark, so like I'm going to make it's not, I guess you can call it the horizon. It's technically not the horizon because it's not where the land meets the sky, right? So just a nice little mark there, right? Just to essentially represent the foreground, right? The ground level, right? This will be the ground, and then I'll have the uprights, the trees, the mountains, the church. So that represents the ground level. And so I make that mark, and I just look at it, and I ask myself, do I like it? Right? And there's three possible answers: yes, I don't know, or no. If it's yes, I just keep going, don't worry about it. No, if it's no, I change it. If I say I don't know, I leave it for the time being, but I'll come back to it later, making a little mental note. And so I'm fine with it there. I like it. I'll say yes. And so I'm thinking about the shapes, right? And so now I'll put where the church is. right? So I know this is middle, so I generally don't want the church there because I want to just break up the space unequally, right? And so, right, I have this as a quarter, so I know, I'll just kind of imagine it, right? So I want it somewhere over here, right? A third be there. And so we'll put it right here, trying to decide. All right, and so the church is essentially just a rectangle, right? Or the shadow part of the church is a rectangle, right? The lit, yes.
Sorry that the light is. There we go.
Right. So the church, right, just a basic rectangle or rectangular prism, right? And again, I'm at, do I like it? And it's not really a conversation, right? It's all just intuitive response. I'm just thinking about it. And so I'll take it a little higher. I think I want it a little higher, a little bit bigger. Here, go down, right? So, right, and I really like the perspective, right? We can think about perspective lines going to a single point, the vanishing point, right? You can see, right, that's creating another nice triangle to bring me into the painting. So, right, we can say that's the vanishing point, right? All heads, right? People's heads would be on that line. Right? So the street, right? So we have the street here. Right? You can see that nice triangle there. Right? So, right, cars. Right, you can see, right, I'm not worried about paint. I'm using plenty of paint. I'm not mixing it too much. Right, so I don't try to make specific cars. I'm just thinking about a general car. Right, general car is kind of a rectangle. And in the reference, there's that car that's on the left, the closer car on the left. I'm moving it back a little bit. I don't want it so close so that I can put a person in there. Right, so a normal sedan, 4-door type of car, right, comes up to about shoulder level. So if this is a head, so if we'll put the person right here overlapping the car, right? So we have one person there. All right, so, right.
Sorry.
Yep. So we have a normal car, it'll come up, or a sedan, right? Come up to the shoulders, right? The van or a SUV would come up to about head height. And so I'll put, where do I want, and so I'm looking, where do I want these cars? Right, so so one car. Right, and so now we see the side of the car, so it's a longer rectangle here. I'll just put them both in there, right? Both cars are right there. Head height, so they need to come up. If they're going to be SUVs or something, they're going to be higher. And so it's one. I'm going to move this a little bit closer because I want this one closer, this one a little bit farther back, and then we'll get some cars in there, some people and some cars. And so you can see, I can start to see the design, right? I like this movement in there. That church makes a nice, interesting bit, right? Some more trees, right? And so I'll have this, there's this tree over here, just represent, right, some bare trees. Now, some of these middle trees, right, even though they're bare trees, just branches essentially, I'm going to look at them kind of as if they're full, just normal shapes, and then I'll use some brushwork to suggest twigs and stuff like that. So we have one on this side. These are kind of going to be the far back. So now I have middle. I have to decide, do I want these trees to be above the middle or below? We'll put them below the middle. right? Just so, again, right, moving back, right, they rehash or emphasize that perspective. So then I have a tree over here. And then, so since I have this tree, I just ask, do I want it higher or lower than that other tree? Now I'm going to put it higher over here. Just let and the shape's not important, it's just something there to go off of, right? And I decide I like that. So other trees, and then we have this tree that overlaps the church that I actually, it's about the same level.
So if that tree didn't overlap just the right way, would you move it?
Yeah, so if the tree doesn't overlap, and so that's why I'm not too worried about being a nice, perfect shape. Like I'll put it in there, right? So that's my tree here. And so I look and I ask, do I like that shape? And I'm not really thinking about necessarily this tree, but I'm looking at the relationship, right? How this overlaps that shape. Again, I'm not thinking tree and church. I'm just looking shape versus shape. Right, so I tend to think composition is what your painting is made of. I have this shape here, I have this shape, those shapes, right? The color I'll use, the texture. Design is how everything is related. So I'll think about the shape, but then I need to check, how does this shape relate to that one, and do I like it, right? I'm always thinking, do I like it? I like the way it's overlapping right now. If I didn't, I would change it. Right, we have some small trees I'll just put in there, right? And at the same time, I'm asking, how important is it? If it's not that important, I don't worry about too much. I put something in, and then if it bothers me, I'll come back later. But, right, the shape is not important. What's important is the relationship. And so that's what I worry about, the relationship. So you have those two trees, and then I'm going to have a smaller tree, right? So I look, and I like that the tree is in between these two shapes, essentially here, right? It's smaller than this one, but it's larger than these distant trees. And so, but at the same time, right, I want this tree to be smaller, the shape smaller than that one. Right, again, I'm thinking about relationships, tucking it behind this tree, right, to develop the space, right? Thinking that, so the picture is not two-dimensional, right? We start thinking of it as three-dimensional. Right, and so this one here, right, and those distant trees there. And so the last important part of the middle ground, right, the mountains. Right, and so I want to think about here, I want the mountains to be lower than that tree. Right, that's how I have it, and I want to do it more than I have it in the sketch. I want it lower, so that's the mountain. I want these mountains to come. So I'm actually going to bring these trees a little bit down, right? I want the mountains to be higher than that tree, right? That's a relationship that I find important. So I'm going to put that there. So, right, this is a building. The lines need to be straight, so I just go down straight, right? I'd be confident, right? And I go down. Right? If you make a confident line, it'll be straighter, more vertical, right? Then if you're timid, it's just going to go over the place, right? So here, right? Confident, right? And a confident stroke that's a little off is much more believable or much more interesting than a unsure one that's closer to the truth. So you can see, right, I have a little bit of the ground, right? You can see I have more of the upright planes here, right? They take up more of the picture. And then I'll have the sky, right? If I check, right, you can see I have more sky than the ground, right? So there's an unequal division of the space, right? The flat plane here, right? The ground is the least. This is, right? This is the important part, right? So that takes up most of the picture. And then the sky, right, takes up the second most portion. All right, so and so now I'm going to redesign the clouds. Now the clouds are just kind of those wispy winter clouds that and the backlighting, so they're going to be a warm, kind of bright clouds So I'm going to just think about, right? But I want to emphasize, again, bring them down, right? So I'll have a cloud here, thinking about there, and then I'll have, right, I'll have the cloud kind of there, right? Again, I'm looking, I'm deciding, do I like it? I think the cloud will come here, and I'll stick it further here, right? Again, so now it's, right? And so it's not, it's bringing you down into the painting, but it's different, right? I have this thrust here, and I have this one coming that way. Right? And so I just designed, right? If I said I didn't like this cloud, so I redesigned it, and so now I like it more. Right? That cloud's fine, and I'm not going to worry about painting it exactly in those lines, but and so now I generally don't use much medium. Actually, I won't use it at all, plein air painting, and most time in the studio unless I'm experimenting. And so I just use thick paint the whole time, right? So a lot of dry brushing, a lot of palette knife. And so I have to decide where I want to start, and it doesn't matter where I start, right? I'm going to make a suggestion, a distance figure. We'll put 2 people back there, right? And I don't need it to be perfect, right? Because if you have a body and something that looks like legs, right? Kind of a triangle shape, the head, right? We fill them in together, right? And we'll put some cars right here. So I have to, right? If this is the bottom of the car here, I'm going to redesign the road. The road will be here. The cars can't be above the road. And so, yeah, and so I'm happy with that as it is right now. A lot of people might start with the darks. I tend to start with the middle ground. Now, if there is a color that I want, that I find is important, I'll start there, right? If it's a very pure color. Generally, I'll start with the midtones. Actually, I forgot, I'm going to put in some of the shadows of the street. And so, right, these cars, this is all going to be shadow here. And I'm going to have it come, so I can kind of make a S-curve. This is essentially what I'm going for here, right? I'm redesigning these shadows. This is all in shadow. And I'm going to put all this foreground in shadow there. So again, right, I have this thrust now that way. Strong design, right? Strong movement, right? That's important to me, is develop this movement in the painting, right? So the actual components, right? The church, the trees, those are important. It's the movement that they create that are important. And so I won't wash this brush, right? I might wipe it off a bit on some towel to get the excess paint, but I won't wash it off because I like that thick paint. So I don't want to lose all that paint that's in there. And plus I don't want to breathe in the solvent. So I won't clean it out to the end of the day.
So you like the paint to be really dry and kind of resist the stroke. Some people like to have a lot of medium and have it liquid.
Yeah, so for me, right, because I like the paint dry and I like a lot of resistance to develop a lot of the brush stroke. And so, yeah, I mean, if I were to use medium, I would lose that. Even if I wash this in the solvent, because now we use odorless mineral spirits, and mineral spirits don't dry off that fast. They'll take a half hour to an hour. And so all that is making my surface wet and greasy, right? And so if you find you're kind of sliding all over the place, right, and it's too slick, right, you may want to think about using drier paint or less medium or cleaning your brushes less, because all that's going on the canvas. And essentially it's making it slicker, right? Some people like that, right? Some people do great paintings with that, right? But it's not what I want, right? And that's the important thing, is to figure out what you want, what I want out of the painting. And so if I'm using a dirty color, I'll come back to this brush. But I will actually use my palette knife here to scrape in a lot of paint, because then I can kind of get the transparent colors. If you look at the trees in my sketch, right, those are very transparent colors. The color of the church, the shadow, is very transparent. And so it can be hard to get transparent colors if you're using really thick paint, and that's why I use the palette knife, because I can really scrape it. So I'll really scrape it for the transparent paint, and I'll lay it on thick. And so I'll start with the trees just so you can see it. So I'm going to take a bunch of paint, right? I'm not being cheap, right? So I'll mix up. So if you look, right, the trees are kind of an orangish color. Take some of that sienna color I had, a little bit of green. Right. And so I'll look on my palette and I ask, do I like that color? And so I'm not sure. And so if I'm not sure, or if it's yeah, I'll try it out. I'll put it on there, right, and see if I really scrape it, right? It goes transparent. And so and so I'm just thinking, trying to decide. And so I'll put a little more red into it. I think I want a little more red. And so the nice thing I really like about kind of the front range area with the trees, a lot of bare trees actually have a lot of color in them. If you actually look at it, there's some that are very yellow, very orange, or very red. And I guess those would be the cottonwood trees, but so don't be afraid to add color, right? So when I look, I'll add a little more yellow. And so, right, I'm not worried about the lines, so now, right, so I put a little bit to test. Now I'm just going to start putting a lot in there. Right, again, I'm not worried about the, but and the important part is I'm really scraping it. Right, so I'm really scraping it so it goes to that transparent color there. Right, so I'm looking at, I don't worry about if it's matching the shape. Right, so now I'm going to mix up a lot of that color so I know that I like it. And so I have it on the palette so I can just keep comparing, right? And I don't care if it's exactly the same, and I don't want it to be exactly the same, right? So I want some division there. So put this one in, and you can see I didn't mix it up very readily, so there's a lot of color coming through, right? And I'll bring that over just to make some differences here. Right, and I'm going to really scrape it again. I'm not worried if I'm going over the lines. I might make a little, just bring some blue in here, just so right, towards the bottom there might be more shadow, right, and just a little gradation. Right, it doesn't matter why I do it, right? It's just something. I'll put it in there, right? Scrape it, right? Those are my cars right there. Right, and so this one I want to be a little bit more gray. So, right, and so I barely mix that at all. You can see I just put it in there. Right, is that what I want? I want to put a little yellow. Right, and just kind of mix it all together. And, right, scrape it, put it down. Right, so now this tree, right, I want to start developing the atmospheric perspective, right? Atmospheric perspective meaning as it goes back, it becomes grayer, more mid-tone. And if it's a nice, bright blue day, sunny day, blue sky, it's going to go bluer. Right? If it's a cloudy day, it's probably going to stay more of a neutral gray. So you might put a little blue in there. Right, but it's got to be a little bit of white, so just take a little bit of white. Now you can see on my palette that I am right next to it, so I can, again, judge the relationship of the two colors. All right, and so I want it to be a little bluer. It's a little bit too cool, a little bit. All right, so I compare the two, and then again, I put it on there and I compare it. It's too dark. All right, so this tree will be a little bit less transparent. Put it on there. I'll put a little too pink. Put a little yellow, right? Like I said, there's those trees that are, and see, I can go over it and then I can scrape it back and give me some interesting edges. And it has that kind of wispy tree effect that I like. Right, and I'll scrape it. Right, so some of those undercolors, right, you can see it makes it more transparent. Right now, this is less transparent than that, right, but it's not going to be as opaque as those mounds are going to be. Right, so then in my distance, all right, I really want this to go back, so I'll make it bluer, essentially grayer, a little more white. I'm going to put some yellow. I'm going to make it more, let's say, again, I'm judging the relationship, but I don't think that's light enough. So let's try it. Right, I might squint to see it a little more clearly. I'm going to put actually just put a little. I'm going to put some of these other colors just to kind of create variation. Right, I didn't brush it. Right, you can actually see the palette knife. How there's a big glob of green right there, and I don't know what's going to happen, and I kind of like that, so I'm going to. Right, and so maybe that's too much green. But you can see I just reworked it to kind of blend it in a little bit more, right there, right? I went over the figures, right? You can scrape them back. Right, I'm not worried about being in the lines, right? You can see I got a little red coming through there because I picked up some color, and that's fine, right? I'm not worried about it, right? I can change it later. And so I'm going to put a little, try to do that little bit of green here. Scrape, scrape, scrape. Right, I'll scrape over it there, right, just to bring them together. And you can see they're going, creating a softness that I want and like. I'm thinking, right, and so now, right, I will clean off the palette knife, right, because I'm gonna put the distant mountains. Now they are blue, right? It's the end of the day. This is a late afternoon shot. Right, they're against the sun. Right, and so now I actually want these two things to be a similar value, probably. Maybe the mountains will be a little lighter. So again, right, I put them right next to each other so I can judge whether it's the right value or not, right? This is too blue, needs to be dulled down. So I just grabbed the other paint. Right, and I'm looking. I'll warm it up a little bit, right? This is why I have phthalo green, so I can warm up this blue. I don't really like ultramarine as a sky color. I find it just way too purpley, I guess. So, but the green helps me warm it up a bit. Warm up that blue again. So I'll test it. No, so I'm deciding whether it's too gray or not. And so I want it distance, but I want it to feel like it's really in the distance. And maybe I'll put a little bit more blue just to bring it back, make it a little more of a pure color. I like the value though. So, right, I want to keep that value. Bring some more. Whoop, that was too much. All right, and I'm playing. Notice I'm probably spending more time on my palette, making sure it's exactly what I want. And we'll go with, I'm going to make it a little more green. Again, I wouldn't have this conversation. It would just be a thought process, really. I'm going to essentially put the border here. You can see right here. Bring it overlap. Right, pick it up.
So that's really different than your original, right? It looks very dark turquoisey.
Yes. So this is probably, from the original, this is probably bluer in color, maybe a little bit lighter in value. The sketch is probably more towards greener color, probably. And so,
I think the camera might be picking it up differently.
okay, maybe.
We'll look at the original when you're done.
Yeah, so I'm just putting it, again, I'm not worried about overlapping, right? Because I'll scrape it back to give me some nice edges there, right here. Merge them together, right? So, right? Scrape, get some interesting edges right here. Right, again, I'm just looking, do I like it? Do I not like it? If I don't like it, I change it. If I'm unsure, I'll make a note and come back to it later. Right? I'll clean off my palette knife so I can, right, because I don't like all those there. And you can see I have a nice spot of yellow there. I mean, it's a small spot that I'll try to tone down, but I don't actually mind it, right? It's a nice, I think, point of interest here, right? But you can see, right, this is a very opaque paint that's really playing off the transparent paint here. And so, right, I need to do this part over here. And I can gradate the color, right? Gradations are nice, right? Because if it's darker or over here or a slightly different color, right, it'll push the eye into the painting there, right? So I'll just like that, right? It's a little bit darker, right? Pick it up here. And then, right, I want to bring these mountains down a little bit more. Right, it's going to be a little muddy right here. Right, sky holes. I'm not worried about what they're actually the sky holes are. I'm just kind of playing around until I get what I want. Right, this is going to be much muddier here. Right, just kind of, right, sky hole. Trying to decide. Again, right, is that what I want? I don't know. All right, and so then sometimes, right, I just go back and forth. So I'll use some paint now, and I'll do this paint, test it out. I actually quite like that. Maybe a little bit more red. Here, right, and I'll scrape it. So another thing I can do, I can just kind of push it in there. And what that allows me to do, right, I can now put a lot of different color in here. And I can really, if I had time, I can really build up this color. You can see, since it's similar value, right, so that's too much in that direction. Right, so, but I could put that in there, right? So for parts of it here, right, I'm going to really, because there's these trees that are down here, right? So here, here, right, I don't really care about. All right, so that's too yellow. Let's dirty it up a little bit here. All right, so you can really see the variation, the broken color, essentially what I'm getting here. Red, so I'm going to use right here. Right, and there's some turrets. There's 4 of them. Some skinnier, some bigger. All right, I'm not worried about. If those were important, I would paint them as such. And I'll just put, just to dirty this up, put that in there. All right, and so then, right, scrape it down. Kind of mingle the color together. Make it transparent. And so there's a lot of, I'll just do this. Just to make it a little more solid, right? Different strokes, different directions. And so again, right, I'm kind of squinting. Do I like it? Do I not like it? So now I have these, right? Now I can get the light on the building a little bit better, a little bit nicer. So, right, that's in light. Essentially, I want a light version of that. So again, right next to those colors here, right? It's a light version, so it's much more yellow. Has a nice glow on it. So on my palette it looks okay, but I'm gonna test it right there. And that might be too dull. Maybe a little bit of red, make it a little more orangey, right? It was too dull, or too gray, I should say. So I'll try it again. Is that what I want? Maybe it needs to be lighter. Right, again, I'm always just looking at it, trying to decide if that's what I want. If it's not what I want, I decide on something to change, right? It might not be the answer either. So now I put that in there. And really what I'm looking at is that relationship. Is this shadow to that color what I want it to be? I don't care what it actually is, right? What I care about is what I want it to be. And I want it to be a little more orange. Here. I'm going to say that's good, right? It's late afternoon light, so it doesn't need to be perfect. Right, so put it in there, right? Scrape, and I'll just kind of pull it down. Right, so then right, nice thing about a palette knife, I can just scrape away. Look at how nice that makes a straight line. Now it's not a perfect straight line. It's broken up. So I get a nice edge, right? This is not a real important edge. I don't want it to be real hard, right? But I want it essentially to be hard with variation, which it has, right? So I look at this one, right? Right, so just bring it, scrape it, right now. So if I don't like that edge, so then I'll bring it up just to. Right, so now it looks like you can see through the tree, right? It's starting to become more wispy as I bring stuff around, like a winter tree. I'm going to cut this off, right? There's these trees down there, right? Softens it up. So I look at that tree. So that's what I want. I'm just going to bring it up a little bit higher. Yeah, so that's nice. I like that. Let's do the skies, right? So this is the brush, right? I'm not going to use this one. It's too dirty, right? If there's a color that I want to be nice and bright, right, I'm going to use a new brush. And you can see these are the rest of my brushes here, right? You can see I prefer flat brushes and bright brushes. I'll have a few rounds in the smaller size just for some detail work. Now I actually like my brushes nice and worn. Right? They're not too perfect. Gives you a nice varied edge. So which one? I'll take this one. Right, so you can see this one. And most people would do the sky rather than the clouds. I actually do the sky, so I have that light color in there, and then I can bring the sky over and change the cloud as I want. I mean, it doesn't matter which one you do first. And again, right, look at how nothing is apart, everything is together, right? So I'm going to just take that one, right? Maybe a little more yellow, right? These are clouds that are against the sun, but they're those winter kind of wispy clouds. So I put that in there. And again, do I like it? Now, since I have a white ground, it's really easy to tell how far away from the white it is, right? And so that's why I like it. White grounds also help if color is really important to you, because then, right, the white ground, anything that's transparent will really enhance the color. If I was using a mid-tone ground, it would really muddy up these transparent colors and ruin that effect, or it wouldn't be as nice of effect. So I can take my finger, you can see I can take my finger as well to kind of soften something, right? If something is too hard, right? I'm thinking those are too hard right now. I just use my thumb. I could use the palette knife. I could use a brush to do it. But since my paint is nice and thick, I find a thumb is the best. Now here, right, I'll just put that in loosely. Now where I care about it being a nice bright color, right, that's where I'll start out first. Make sure that's nice and bright. Then I'll move, right here, and then let's just, right, and right, I intentionally kind of, right, not afraid to go over, right, and muddy up the color essentially, because I can always come back, right? This is an opaque color, right? Just get some nice flicks in there, bring it down, push it up, right? I'm just looking for a nice effect, nice soft effect, essentially, that I'm looking for here. And I'll take my, right, that's not doing what I want here. There we go. All right, and I squint to see, right, to simplify everything. So I like that, right? You can see I have a lot of red there, so I'm just, right, I'm not going to wash it off. I just put it on my, wipe it off. And so I don't use paper towels. I use nice kind of terry cloth towels, right? I buy them. You can buy like 10 of them at Walmart or somewhere. Yeah, so they're these are microfiber, and so they take off the paint off your brush really well, right? So you don't need to use medium. If I was using paper towels, I would just go through the whole paper towel roll trying to clean my brushes off, right? And so this way I don't have to worry about it. And you know, if you get a pack of 10, if I'm painting every day, they last, you know, a month or two. So it's actually cheaper to buy these, I find, than to mess with paper towels. And it's more environmentally friendly if you care about that. I'm just gonna, right, because I don't want a line to be there. So I'm just gonna push it, break it up right here, right? And you can see I'm going over the line a little bit because I can always cut back, right, with my sky to make it the shape I want. Really, right here, right, and I'll come back now, I'll be a little more careful, make this the shape I want, right, and so as I play this off, the color will be a little more gray, so, right, I'm looking, yeah, that's fine, right, and so get a different edge, right, nice dry brush, there, right? So that gives me now an even different edge than I've gotten over here. Right. I'll do sound effects just to make it fun. Right. So, right, that's too much blue there. So we just mix up some more paint. Just paint over it, dull it down. And I want some blue to be there, so I don't want to obliterate it, but right. I don't want it to stick out, right? This is the edge of the canvas, right? Not that important to me, the edge of the canvas. Right? Again, if it's not that important, I don't worry too much, right? It just blends in. And so I'm looking, I like this cloud, right? So then, right now, the blue, and so, right, I'm using the same brush, come in, right? So now, I got too much ultramarine blue there. So then I'll come back, wipe it off, right? I won't go back, I'm just using a little bit. Right? Again, like I talked about, I don't really like how ultramarine blues are grays down with the white. Right? White will gray down your color, right? Essentially just because it's thinning down the pigment, essentially, right? You're less of that pigment, right? I test that. Look at how nice, and with the ultramarine blue and phthalo green, right? And that's nicely pigmented, right? The phthalo green has plenty of pigment as a student grade in it. And so I like that. So at the bottom, so this is essentially going to be my main, you can call it the mother blue color. At the bottom, I'm going to put this in here, right? And so I'll mix it up a little bit here, right? That's going to be, right? Notice I'm painting over it right here, right? I'm being a little reckless, you can say, with it. And I need to cover up this is why, you can see why a lot of times I just use pencil, because the lines will kind of pervade through. Right, soften, right? I'm just kind of flicking at it to soften it. So that's the main color here, right? And then so at the top, the top, right? A little more ultramarine blue. So you can see now I'm mixing more of it in, right? That's still 2. So I can judge the ratio. Put it on there. Right? So you can, I'm always going to leave a little bit there. So I have something to judge, Joshua. You can see, just keep taking it. Right? Right? Now bring it over, right? Overlapping color. I like to think about painting like a jigsaw puzzle, right? Everything kind of fits together. Right? You can see, right, a jigsaw fits together. So I'm painting, I'm always overlapping somehow, right? Painting over the lines. I want that wispy, right? So I shouldn't have done that, right? Bring it back. Right, so now towards the mountains, right? It's going to be lighter, it's going to be warmer. Right, closer to the horizon line. Because the light is scattering differently, because essentially it's a different angle from the sun, but we don't need to worry, right? So essentially I want it more towards that color. I don't want it to be that color, but I want it to be closer, right? So I'm judging, right? So that's close, right? Essentially it's the same value. If you squint at it, right, they pretty much look the same. Probably on the camera they look pretty much similar. But it's a greener color. It's essentially, again, it's a warmer version of that middle blue that I talked about. Right? So again, overlapping here. Right, so, right, if I want to cover that up, right, take a little more here. Right. I'm going to push this up. There we go, right? Because I don't want the lines to show. And that's, like I said, that's why I would use pencil, because it wouldn't mix. So, yeah, I'm liking the way that's feeling right now. Bring that down more. Right, got to get rid of that line. Right, there's some nice soft things going on. Right, I don't like that. It's too much like a sky hole, but I can scrape. Right, and I can put it back on here. Right, I can push it. Right, just grab some of that color. Bring it up here. Right, and if not, I can just mix more of it, right? It's just essentially this color in white. It doesn't have to be perfect match. Right, so again, I can just bring it over, right? Too dark, it needs to be lighter. Bring it over here. A little darker. Right, you can see all the striations of different color. Maybe it might not show up in the camera, but there's a lot of white, more parts that are more yellow, right? So I'm just gonna take that. I wanted that part to be thicker. Right, so went over the border, right? That's not a problem. Right, you can see, so it's giving me a nice, so I like that. What I'm going to do, right, just to blend in some strokes, just take it, push the paint around to mix it. Trying to decide, maybe I'll do, right, there's a bit of a tangent there that I'm not liking.
Can you explain what tangents are?
So tangent would be where two things meet, the two edges. Right, so if I put, so you see my palette knife is making a tangent, right? The edge is making a tangent with this tree right there. Essentially two edges meet. The problem with two edges, when two edges meet, they make you think that they're the same thing or part of the whole. So I'm going to do that. All right, so just to Right, so now the edge of the cloud is not meeting the edge of the church. Right, so essentially, right, there's the sky overlap the church, the clouds overlap the church. Everything is overlapping rather than two edges meeting. I'm actually quite liking how the sky's feeling right now. So I'm not gonna just get rid of some of this white area here. Right, so, right, scrape it away. Right, that's a little, bring it. Yeah, I like that little bit of light there. It's a little bit, just need to get rid of the edge. There, yeah. That's nice. I like that. And so I really like and so again, I'm not judging one thing on its own. I'm looking at the relationship the whole time. So the only thing I see is I don't like, you can see that some of the original lines there, it's just dominating too much. So I'll take some of the cloud cover here and just kind of mix it in. Right, and a little bit is fine. I don't care about, a little bit doesn't matter, right? You'll see it. You might not be able to see it very well on the monitor, but when it's all mixed in, right, it's about the same value, it's fine. But it's when it's a different value that that's causing some, I look at it and it bothers me, right? I don't care if it's right or wrong. I look at it and decide whether it's bothering me or not. And if it's bothering me, I change it, right? Just like here, there's a little piece of white there. It's a little bit too light. And it's fine, and so let's take a little. Right. So a palette knife is wonderful for making straight lines that are straight, but not, right, kind of broken straight, I guess you can say. So I like them. I like this movement. So we'll leave that for now. Right, cars. So let's do a car. Right, so I'm going to essentially leave this in case I want to make changes to the sky later on. So that would essentially be my sky brush. So cars, right, it's backlighting only the top plane, so essentially the top of the car and the top of the hood. I'm just going to mass it in. I'm not worried about what type of car it is. Essentially, I just want to make a gray color. You can see it's just on the bluer side in my sketch, and I like the bluer side. Again, right in the middle. That's not blue enough. It's not cool enough, I should say, right? The color doesn't matter. It's really the relationship, the cool colors, right? Making you think about like kind of nighttime or distance, warm colors, making you think about fire and light and sunlight. And then let's take, right, I want to put a little more white. I don't grab my white if I have the paint on my palette. I just use that because it'll make it more interesting. So I'm just going to block in. I have that person, but I don't worry about that person. I'm trying to, right, this is the bottom of the other cars. I want this car to appear to be closer to me, so it needs to be lower, right? Front of a car, right? Scrape it away, right? So I scrape, and so now this is where I'm going to use a round brush, just so a little bit of detail. And so I want the light on the top of the car. So now this car, I'm painting as a light, white, off-white type of color. So, right, sunlight, we tend to show as being warm. So it's going to be a white. It's actually, I'm going to look at the clouds and I'm going to say, how do I want it to be different than those clouds? Maybe just needs to be whiter, and maybe a little bit. I don't want them to be the same color as the clouds, just because I want a little variation. So top of the car, so I have just a square in there right now, top of the car. Just nice, easy, right? Windshield. So I have essentially, I'm going to change it slightly, right? Side of the car, right? Just an angle, right? Because the windshield, you can think of like I forget what that shape is called, maybe a rhombus. So here, now this side of the car, right? Sun is going to be over here, essentially. So this side of the car will be in shadow. But now I need to be the top of the car. I'm going to gray it down just to change it a little bit. Top of there, right? The windshield is essentially just a rectangle with the edges cut off. So look at it. It's already starting to look like a car, right? Just putting on a roof, that angle, and it's already looking like a nice car, right? And I'll gradate the side over here a little bit. Right, gradation makes it interesting, right? Stronger, right, since the sun is up here, right, at the top left of the painting, right? This side is actually always going to be stronger sunlight. Now you don't need to worry about that. That's not really that important, right? Just like the wheels. So I'll grade down, right, still, right, the wheels over here. Right, so I just kind of flick it. Right, that's not light enough. So we'll go back to a light color. There. Now, so that's a nice light color. So now, right underneath the car, right, the shadow and the stern, those aren't as important, right? Essentially, they're just lines. So I'm just going to make a darker color. Just bring that up here. Blue, right, to make a nice dark color, right? So, and really, if you want a nice black color, right, and so how they make what's called a chromatic black, like Gamblin has their chromatic, they just mix phthalo green and they use quinacridone red, but essentially it's like alizarin crimson. So if you need a black, you just mix those two colors, and then right, anything lighter, just add some yellow or a little bit of white. So I'm gonna, right, I have the underneath part of it, right? Underneath the car is quite dark here. This person is overlapping, so I'm not gonna worry about the wheel. And I liked what would be, right? So if I use really thick paint, I don't know if you can see it really well, but it makes a nice fine tip. That's the nice thing about using thick paint. You can really mold your brush, right? And so we'll make a little license plate, right there. And then I can come back with my palette knife, shape it up a bit, right? So, I mean, to me, right, that looks good enough like a car. Doesn't need to look any better. Maybe I'll bring it over. I'm going to go back. I'm just going to make this, re-emphasize that, make it a little more yellow. So again, right, I'm just thinking, is that what I want? You know, I'm going to bring this down a little bit, make it a little bit thinner. It's a little bulky for what I want. Might make it. There we go. So that looks close enough to a car. And so I'll do the shadow, right? It's a shadow. Right now, I'll just connect this shadow in there. Bring it all. So it needs to be a little lighter, a little more mid-tone. Essentially, it's a gray. It's pretty gray. A little bit on the blue-violet. I'll put that in there. How do I like that? I'm not sure. So maybe I'm going to put a little more yellow into it. Because the road is kind of this creamy color. So I don't want it to be too, so it needs to reflect that. So now it's a little more green, maybe a little red. Again, right, I don't know these answers. I'm just kind of going with it here.
So there are a lot of people who would look at the road and say, well, it's gray.
Mm-hmm.
But you're pulling out something you see in that, say it's a concrete road, a light gray. I mean, you're pulling it out to make it more interesting.
Yeah, and so if I was looking at the original scene as I painted it, you know, from in life, if you looked at it, really it just looked gray, right? It wouldn't look very interesting of a color. And so, right, that's my first goal is to make a very gray color, right? If you compare this color to that one or those, it's a very gray color. But at the same time, I don't want it to just be, I want it to be interesting. So I'm pushing it towards a color. So I'm kind of pushing it towards the blue-green color, right? And so this is the foreground. So, right, and I'm just kind of laying my brush. You can see I turn it over. One side has a slightly different color, so I just get some variation in there, right? So I'm just kind of whacking it in. I'm not too worried about all the little spots of light. And I'll put a little again, I'm varying the color. I don't want it to be all one color. As long as the value is the same, right? So this is actually a little more of a reddish purple color, right? As opposed to kind of a green, right? So a little variation in there, right? Not all the strokes going in the same direction, unless, right? There are times where you want that. Right? And so notice as I put them over here, I'm going to do it more this way, right? My brush stroke can also convey movement, right? That's an important thing to me, as I talked about before. So by putting the brush strokes like that, right, they enhance the movement there. I'm just going to do all this. And I'll put the light on top of it. So that's all shadow. And so the distance, right, the distance shadow would be more gray, right? And so here, I'm just going to use this gray. And so I'm going to suggest the distance by just not having so much color in it. So that way, right, and I have my cars are over here, right? Just start out as rectangles. I'm going to use the top right there. So I'm going to put, and I have my people that are right there, right? People, it's all going to be one color right now. Just so I can see. And you can see I need a little bit more. This needs to, I'm going to mix it right now. Just so it's not, I don't have that white strip annoying me. Again, right, just to kind of, it's in the distance, so things that are distance are going to be softer. And so now, since I have this color, it's going to make it easier to judge the light. But actually, I'm just going to whack in the cars there. I'm just going to take a bunch of paint on my palette, right? And so if I just need it to be a gray, right, the shadow side of those cars, right, I just pick up a lot of paint, right? So this paint, right, head, high, right? Cars are essentially, we can just build them out of rectangles like I talked about. So this is actually going to be two vans, right? I went with vans. The vans were actually there, so I just went with them. Right? But they're nice. They gave, right there, just a little bit of variation. Right? I'm going to scrape the bottom off because the bottom of them, I'm going to want to paint over, right? There will be some shadow in there and some wheels. And really the main part, nope. Right, that's too light. So I come back. So I'm going to bring it over more. Right, so this is why I keep a little bit of color so I can bring this in here. You know, kind of play with it a little bit. Right. So again, right, I would have had a tangent there, right? Or essentially a continuation is more, right? This line comes down, and so I didn't want the car to be right there as well, right? Because essentially it would have the same effect as a tangent. It would it would make it seem like they're connected somehow, right? Where they're really not, right? The church is behind these cars. So again, just to make something identifiable as a car. Right? So now I'm going to make a nice dark color, right? So blue, green, red. So my windshield, right? So nice. So windshield, right? And I'm going to angle it down, angle it down. Right, so now it's starting to look more like a car, right? I'm going to just get more angled there. Bring
So is that meant to be closer? It looks like it's a lot higher up than the other car.
right, and so because this is,
It's further away.
well, this car is closer, but this is a sedan, right? A small car, right? So, right, whereas these are vans. And again, and it's an important choice to make because now, since this is higher, right, it's pushing me towards that car, right? I mean, it doesn't make a huge difference. It really wouldn't matter too much, but it's just something that helps a little bit. And they might be a little bit too high, right? The head height is probably here, so they can probably come down a little bit here. But right now, I don't worry too much about that because I can adjust that later, right? So then shadow underneath the car, right? So here, right? Because we're looking at the side, so this wheel, there's a wheel over here, right? And so then, right, essentially I have two cars that are connected right now. I'm gonna divide it up into two different cars. So, but really, right, the key to getting a car to look like a car is just the headlights or taillights. Right, so once I start putting these headlights, right, let me make it a little more red. Right, so now, right, it's starting to look more like a car. Right, so I'm going to go back to this color, right? So, right, I need to make the front of the car. And I can see by doing that now it's actually too high up. It's too high up, I don't like it. So I'll scrape it off, see if I can scrape it down. I can just take some of this color, color it up, gives me a nice, and so that looks better. I think that looks better. I'm going to take this, blend them together a little bit, play with it. That's way too big. There we go. Now I need top of the car, right? Like I said, and a rim or a backlighting. Top of shapes are going to have light, right? Unless they're like trees where they're towering over you. Anything that's beneath you. So we're going to let's put a little bit of light there. I'll put right. We have the front of the car there. So there's some overlap, right? And then I'm going to change the color. So now I just need the side of the car. Essentially, I'm going to use, right, I don't want it to compete with the light of the other cars, but it still needs to look like the light side of the car, right? This is shadow, this is the light side. So I just take it, and look at that. So, right, we have the front part of the car. things kind of blend. I don't like that. I'll just take that wheel away for now. You can see how it's really starting to look like a car now. Right. And if all else fails, just kind of blur it away. Right. And there's a wheel up here. That's too light. Just paint over it. Right. So right, shadow color underneath here. I'm gonna bring the shadow over here. Right. So I like how that car's looking right now. Interesting. You know, it's there, but it's not there, right? It's not that important. Right, and so then, right, I want this car is a little bit further away. So, right, the windshield is not going to be as dark as this one there. Right, bring it down, scrape, blend. But again, right, it's going to have a little bit of light on it. Again, not quite as light as, it's not going to be as light as that. You just need something, right, to suggest that there's a car there. Right. Right, and then again, the side car. This one's not looking the way I want it right now. Right. Right, and so it's not looking the way I want it, but it's just these two colors are too close together, right? This should be shadow, that should be light. So either I can lighten this more or I can darken that more. I'm going to darken that more just because I don't want this to compete with that. Right? This light can't compete with those. So I'm going to darken that and make it, it's a little bluer, a little green, blue, gray, greenish blue, gray in the sketch. So I'm going to check that. That's a little bit too dark. Oops, sorry. Thank you. Okay. Okay. All right, so right. And then we need our taillights. So taillights. And I think that the windshield, the back windshield needs to be darker. I mean, that makes it look better. Yeah, it's not too important. Right, and so I'm going to take this to lower. I want it to be a little bit lower. Take this, scrape that a little bit here. Push it. It just needs to remind me of a car. It doesn't need to be a specific, it just needs me to look at it and say, oh, that's a car. So I'm getting there, right? It's not quite there. Maybe we'll push it out a little bit more. You can see from all this scraping and pushing paint around, I have paint all over the place. And then, right, I can scrape it away, or I can just take more of that, bring back that color and paint over it where I want to. But I'm happy. I'm happier where that car is now. Right? Again, right, that car is not important. So it doesn't need to be very, right? It doesn't have to be exactly what I want. Not right now, I can change it later. Right, and so I look at it and, I ask, am I happy with it? And I say, I don't know. But it's not no, right? If it's no, I would keep working on it. If it's yes, I would stop. If it's I don't know, I think about it and come back later, right? Just blur that a little bit. It's too strong a color for that. I like that green bean there, but it's too strong of a color. And so sometimes just for efficiency, I'll just take some paint on my finger and put it on there. I actually kind of like that as a...
So, I'll put this now, but if you could hold your palette more vertical, then you'll lean in less because you're
okay.
right over the camera.
All right. Thank you.
It's okay, but
yeah, no, that's... All right, so we'll put the light of the street in there now. How are we doing on time?
fine.
Okay.
We can go until noon if we want.
All right. Yeah, I just didn't want to...
And we can take a break too, we'll just cut.
Okay, no, I'm doing fine, so... and so as I paint more, I'm liking how the sky is looking, so I'm going to take my sky brush because I'm going to do the light of the ground plane, the light of the ground plane. All right, so it's a... And really, the color I chose is just... I looked at it, and it's what I wanted, essentially. Again, it's a gray color, right? But it kind of looked like this greenish, gray-green, gray color. And I like the warmth, and so I put it in there, and right, that's not warm enough. Right, so I'm going to put a little yellow into it, or I'm sorry, a little red. On my palette, that's looking too red, but if I try it there, it's not bad. It's close. I'll put a little more yellow into there. All right, not mixing a whole lot, right? And I'm bringing it over. The value looks okay. And so let's try this. Yeah, we'll stay there. Right, so here, right, that's nice. Right, and so that's why I don't mix my color very thoroughly, right? If you look at this one, you can see there's greens, there's reds, there's the lighter colors in there. And so by doing that, right, I get a lot of variation without having to do extra work. Right. And so this will go here, right? That's the top. And so I'm going to consider my design right now here. Bring that, right, make it a little more interesting. I'm just going to play with the edges essentially. I bring that up a little bit here. And it's all just, I try it and I look at it and I decide whether I like it. I don't like that stroke. Right. So I'm going to Right, so I'm going to play with, put it on, scrape it off. That's how you get interesting marks, right? Nothing is in one go. Right, and so I have a variety of strokes here. Right, I'm again overlapping. And I'll change the color a little bit. Get more of this gray color. Bring it on top, right? Variation. Right, so here. That's light there. You can see I kind of grade it down, right? There's a gradation where this is grayer than that is. Again, that kind of pushes you into the painting, right? It keeps you from staying over there. So I need to get, there's a little, it suggests a little bit of distance there, right? I just go right into my gray there, take it. All right, a little bit of distance. I'm just going to soften it a little bit. Right. Right. I'm going to bring this down here. Just scrape it out. All right, if I want to bring some of that back, I'm just going to test this just to make sure it's close enough to the original color. All right, so here, that's too light now. Take some of my gray, take some of the green. And again, it's just too, now it's too dark. Right? Always playing around, right? I make sure, test it. Is that what I want? Right, I can test it there, you can see it, right? The value matches. The value's pretty close. Maybe a little bit. Right, and I might test it here just to make sure the value is correct, right? So just playing with it. Right, because essentially these are tree shadows that are coming across, so they have to have their own kind of wispiness to them. Right, and the light is coming this way, so right, whatever I do, right, needs to suggest that. So then I'll come back. Right here. All right, so I yeah. I'll dry brush just to again want that. Right, so you can really see I'm not afraid to make a mistake, right? I'm trying to actually make a bunch of mistakes, right? So it kind of just makes the painting surface a little more interesting. Right, variety of different brush strokes. Right, and so there's going to be more detail here, less detail in that shadow. So again, that'll kind of convey distance. Right, there's going to be, and so, right, we'll call that, right, so I don't know if it's complete, but it's good enough for what I want right now. And then this white bits, those are going to be kind of the grassy areas, right, where you get on, right, it's no longer street. We'll save those, right, those are not important at all. I'm going to put the people in, right, and so I'm going to use my nice small brush. And so they are backlit. So again, right, most of the head is in shadow. So I want, essentially what I want is a complexion that looks like it's in shadow. Right? So for Caucasians, right, they would be kind of a dark, cool, reddish color, red-brown. All right, so here's the head, right, and the head is, right, and I just kind of pull it down. I'm really gonna, because then I just want you to know that there's a person there, right? We don't care who it is, how important, right? They're essentially just a stage prop. They're just there to, we want them to know that they're people, We don't want you to know who they are. Right? And I'm just going to decide what clothes they're going to wear. Right? I'm just thinking about it in my head. Doesn't matter what they are. I'm going to make it a nice blue, dark blue, right? A shadowy. So they have shoulders, right? And just nice strokes there. I'm not going to put the arms in. No need. Right? I'm going to pull that down. I'm just going to mess with it a little bit, right? A nice stroke. And then what pants are they wearing? Whatever pants you want them to be wearing. For me, it's like, do I want a nice dark black in there? Or maybe they're wearing khakis? I don't know. We'll try something. So I'll just start, I'm going to say they're wearing khakis. Right, so a nice tannish color. Something that's a little bit different, so it brings in a little repetitive, but at the same time. So here, right, uneven, I'll make it, there we go, I like that. So when you get a stroke that you like, right, you leave it, right? It doesn't mean it has to be there in the entire time, right? We'll say she's wearing a skirt. So she has her feet. Here. So a little more red. Just mix it in with the red. And so she's got her little feet there. Now she's standing in the shadow. So since she's in the shadow, there's no light on. There's not going to be any light on her. Now, if you want it for effect, like if I needed a highlight there and there, if I thought that would make the painting better, I would put it there. I wouldn't care how realistic it was. Right? She's in shadow, so she has no highlights realistically. But I'm going to put a highlight. I'm not going to put it in there. But if you thought it would make the painting better, then you better put it in there, right? Anything that makes the painting better, doesn't matter whether it's realistic or not. You put it in there, right? And I'm going to strip.
Do you mean whether it's what you're seeing there on the scene?
Yeah, so realistic being it more reflects reality, right? And so my goal is not to create something that reflects what's really there, right? And so I use it as a staging ground, right? And so I'm doing everything I can to make this a great painting, right? So that includes changing reality, right? This is my world. I do what I want with it, right? And so I'm just blurring down the feet, right? So she kind of attaches to the ground. She's not separate from it. And I can do a little bit of this to kind of attach her to the car, right? Soft edges help connect, right? We talked about that connecting of things together. So I think that's working nicely. I'm going to bring this down. So that's a little bit too much. And so, right, I don't like it, so I'm going to take my blue again. Boom, there we go. And so, right, it gives a nice little halo effect on it, right? So again, it's kind of connecting, and it vaguely suggests arms. I don't want arms, right? It's not important. Arms are not important. And so I'm going to, I have two people, I like them right there. I'm going to put them in there. But they're farther back, right? So they're much grayer. So, right, the face has to be much grayer. So I'm going into my gray, or gray I see. Right, head height lines up. They don't have to be exactly, right? Because some people are taller, some people are smaller. And so I look at that, I'm going to lighten it a little bit, make it a little more blue. Just add a little green for fun. Right, so, right, I just add colors I want just so there's variation. You can see my brush, right, how the paint is just kind of gobbing out of it. Right, and so you can see there we go, right, so that's better. So again, what are they wearing? They're in the distance, so it's going to be gray. So let's make it violet, just because I want to, right? That's the important part. That's what I want to do. It's not important what they're wearing. Shoulders are going to be about equal, right? Just dab, dab. I'll say that's a little bit more, a little bigger. And so I like that. Fine. The other person is going to be green because we don't have a lot of bright or even colors that go green. So I'm just going to, same value, blob, and just kind of mix them together. And you kind of lost the head on that guy. So I'm not right. I don't even care if it's the right color. Just put that in there, right? So that green actually suggests a little more distance. So before it was a little too red. And so, right, they look nicer now. I'm going to pull it down, right? I'm not going to worry about, let's just say they're wearing bodysuits. Right, I'm not, there they are. Right, because they're going to be in the shadow as well. Perspective, top of the cars. I'm going to use that. And I like those people right now. Right, they're there, but they're not there. Right, they're, again, right? And so they suggest distance. Right, they bring you into painting. If you think, right, we have a little interest here, a little bit here, and then we're going to have a little bit there. Right, it makes a nice, again, triangle kind of composition there. And I'm actually just going to leave what's there. All I'm going to do is just add the highlights onto it. And that's going to be the cars. I'm just going to add the highlights for this row of cars here. All right, so there's going to be highlights on the top of the car, right? It's going to come down, perspective, about where the shoulders. So here, right? So there's one car there, right? That's too thick. Right, so there's one there, right? And see, I am knitting or jigsawing essentially those colors together there. I don't want it to be that thick. Right? But essentially I'm jigsawing the jigsaw color, there, right? Because now, right, they relate to each other. They have a relationship. They're not separate, right? The bottom of the cars are going to be here, right? These are closer, so they're going to be farther down, right? If you want to do a perspective, you can do that. I just think about closer is farther down, farther away is high up, right? Just like the feet come down. She's closer, the feet are lower. Here, feet are higher, right? Anything eye level, like heads or top of vans, SUVs, will be on the same line, right? So you can see that there. All right, so that's one car. And so we'll do another car. So we'll essentially do a line of cars here, right? All of them becoming, and that's actually all I'm going to do for those cars. Right? Just kind of scrape them away. Right, and what makes cars identify really is the taillights. So a little bit. Right, now they're going to be, I'm actually going to make these a little bit more red. And so then these can be a little bit duller down. All right, so here. And I'll scrape off the excess. You still need shadows. Scrape most of it away, actually. Let's put that. Right, and so farther away, right? Less detail, not as important. Right, but those little hits of highlight really, I am going to have the side of this car highlight. Right, that's too thick. Right. Here. So. going back, these shadows need to be reworked, right? Because this car is going to cast a shadow. That's why some of that white space as well. Right. Farther, we blew it down. I'm going to test it down here, right? So you can see it's too dark. Line it up. So here, here, here. I'm just going to take that off the page there. Take that there. I'm going to make these the back highlights, the highlights of the back of the car where they're getting less light. I'm going to make this a little darker, just to really show off the back so we know what is the back. And there we go. So that's the back of the car, and there's another back of the car here. So just playing around, trying to make it. There we go. That looks better. Right. Just some wheels. Let me push it around a little bit. Right, just suggesting some wheels. There we go. Just to connect it. It looks a little crooked right now. So I'm going to just try. There we go. That looks better. All right, so I have some nice cars. And so now I know this should actually, I'm going to put the grass in there. Okay. All right, so let's just add the grass. Again, right, the grass doesn't matter. I don't care about the grass. Just needs to look like a grass color. So it's way too bright. It's fall time, right? So I just take it, go right into my gray, mix all that color together. Let's test it out. Right. Now it needs to look like it's in light. So I look at that and I ask, does that look like it's in light? And I say no. So it needs to be lighter. So I'll go right here. It needs maybe a little more yellow. Yeah. How does that look? That looks better, right? For the grassy area there. This mess, right? Grass is rough. All right, so there's grass there. There's going to be grass here. A little bit. Let's put some in there just to break it up. Push it around. Nope. I don't like that mark. So it's going to go away. Right? But right, having a little bit there actually looks quite nice. So this should be light. Let's wipe off. So I just wiped off the excess paint. So I know my road color is there. So here. So it's still a little bit too green. Red, right, kills green. They're opposites, complementary. Just kind of blend those together. bring that. I'm gonna make a front of the car right there. Front and the windshield. Cut that edge off, soften it up. I like that. All right. So now, if you actually look at my original sketch, I have those two trees all the way on the side. And so the question now would be whether I would want to put those in, right? I would have one here, but I'm actually quite liking the way the painting's looking now. And so I like that I didn't put them in there, right? I wasn't sure what I wanted out of them in the beginning, so I didn't put them in there. And so, but now I like the fact that I didn't put them in there. Right? And so that's why when I say I don't know, well, I want something to happen, I don't worry about it. I leave it for later. Because if I leave it for later, I know, the only thing I know is I want this to come over, or I want there to be some more overlap there. And I want a little bit more overlap here. Bring that color there. So overlap there. I want to make, there's these trees there that are more prominent. I'm just going to whack them in there. Right there, much more of an orangey yellow, much more gray. Let's take a look how that, and so that looks fine. Right, let's make some here, clean up some edges. All right, but right, and I'll connect these, right? I'll put some over here just to connect them together. Put some over here, connect those together. All right, so I like that. I'm liking how it's looking now. Let's bring this over here. All right, so you can see there's some white spits. Okay, so just white spits here. This comes back, right? So I like that. Got rid of that white bit. There's this white bit over there. So, and right, it's not important. So I'll just put some, I'm just going to use a gray. Right, essentially here, gray. We'll call it, say it's something, but I don't know what it is. Doesn't matter. Just needs to fit a profile. I do need a trunk for that tree. Again, don't really need a trunk just because, but it's just kind of floating there. I'm going to put it right here. And again, I asked, do I like it there? Do I not? It's fine. It's not, whoop, don't like that. Right, I'm just trying to connect it essentially to the ground. Soften the bottom, right? You think about trees, right? If it's snow or grass, right? It comes up overlaps the trees, right? Think about fitting things together again. And I'll just take color, there we go. There. I'm going to say that this painting is done for now. All right, and so, you know, what I may do is just leave it for a day or two, come back, you know, let the paint firm up, come back tomorrow, right? I might look at it with fresh eyes. I mean, it's something I might change is I might make this mountain maybe a little bit, you know, not such a straight diagonal line. Maybe flatten it out right here or something. That probably needs to be done. Maybe make some trunks in here or something. But I mean, I like the way it's looking now, so I'm happy with it. But yeah, I would bring it back to the studio after a couple of days, look at it, see what needs to be done with fresh eyes. But I like the sky. I like the sky. I like what's happening in the church area, right? Maybe soften that, right? But everything, I think everything is leading to the design I was going after, right? Nice focal area here. This is the important part. Convey the important part with people and cars, right? I adjusted this scene to make it work to what I wanted, to what I was going after. But again, right, I didn't worry about making mistakes. I just went after it. And you can see on my palette how everything is linked together, right? Again, think about that jigsaw idea. Everything is working together to create a harmony and to create drama, right? Drama is made by contrast, right? This dark against that light, right, creates drama, right? Harmony is when things are similar, right? These things are similar, so they create a harmony, right? I wanted to show interest there, but not make it dramatic, not compete with this, right? And so, yeah, so I think we'll leave it there, all right? And happy painting.